firefighters in New South Wales are preparing for another dangerous day after unprecedented conditions wreaked havoc across the state. 2 emergency warnings remain in place. More than 2,000 firefighters have battled throughout the night to protect lives and homes, but several properties have been lost in the last 24 hours. More than 1 million hectares have been burned. Temperatures have now dropped, but a gusty southerly wind change has created a new threat for crews, sending already existing fires in new directions. A statewide fire ban remains in place. We have our reporters right across the fire zones in Rothbury, Taree, RFS and the QFES headquarters. Up first, of course, Pete Stefanovic joins us live from Taree, where we begin our coverage.
Yeah, good morning to you, Laura. I'm at an evacuation centre in Taree, and yesterday there was a lot less number of people who were here, and at its peak yesterday there were in excess of about 1,000 people who had come here because of all the problems that were around the mid-north coast, and those problems do exist despite there being conditions that have eased overnight. Firefighters have really been able to get the upper hand on a number of blazes that are burning around the state. At its peak yesterday, there were about 13 fires that were burning at emergency level. Overnight, that has been reduced to 2. So significant work there by the firefighters, but that threat remains. Even though conditions have eased, the sun is rising now, so temperatures are expected to increase over the next couple of hours. There are 2 fires burning, as I mentioned, at emergency level. One just south in Hillville from here, about 10 kilometres south. It's so far burnt through about 21,000 hectares of land. Buildings have been burnt. Homes have been lost. There was one resident in particular who had successfully saved his home from fire twice in the last week. But unfortunately yesterday he lost it following a change in wind speed and a change in wind direction. At Liberation Trail, west of Coffs Harbour, that's another fire burning at emergency level. This one is a big one. About 150,000 hectares have so far been burnt, which is about 1/10 or less than 1/10 of the total amount of bushland that has been burnt across the state over the past 7 days. So again, while I say conditions have eased, the threat certainly remains. Threat also remains in the Hunter region, and that's where we find Jackson Williams this morning in North Rothbury. Jackson, firefighters were brave and they were brilliant, weren't they?
Incredibly brave, incredibly brilliant, managing to stop this blaze from spreading. We'll have a look on the other side of the road where we can see where the bushfire ravaged bushland. There were towering flames yesterday afternoon. Thankfully, only a handful of homes were damaged. None were destroyed. The situation simply could have been a lot worse. Some of the residents, well, this blaze certainly took them by surprise. Those that were at their homes, they fled immediately. When they returned, they really had no idea if their homes were still going to be standing, but thankfully they were. We'll speak to a family now who were not here throughout the day yesterday, so they really didn't know what they were in for when they were returning. We've got Stephanie here, we've got Madeline, we've got William and James. Sorry, James. Stephanie, I'll start with you. Certainly, a nervous few hours yesterday. You heard that there was a big blaze here, literally on the other side of the road from your house. Thankfully, your house is okay.
Yes, we were in Newcastle at the time when the blaze broke out, and we were trying to get home, but we were turned away down the road. So we went out to my dad's at Eldersley and left the kids there, and then later tried to return home once we thought it was safe without the kids, to have a check first about what the situation was.
And what was running through your mind as you sort of were driving down the main road here towards your house? Were you preparing for the worst?
We were. We had heard on the news that homes had been damaged, so we weren't exactly sure what that meant for us, whether, we were thinking, well, we do have a brick home with a tin roof, so that is probably a good thing for embers and things. As far as, the houses up the road, which are weatherboard, they didn't fare quite as well. But yeah, we were definitely preparing for the worst.
And I believe you were able to meet 2 of the firefighters who helped save your home with your garden hose.
Yeah, so once we were allowed back in, we walked around to the fire station and saw the firefighters, and 2 lovely ladies got separated from their fire truck when the fire jumped the road. So they were using our garden hose to water my husband's car, which was still here, and to put out all the little spot fires around. Absolutely incredible.
Stephanie, thank you so much for your time. I'm glad the family is safe. I'm glad the house is okay. There's a few spot fires sort of in your front yard that we can see, but certainly no extensive damage to this property, Pete. It really was a close call for so many people here in North Rothbury. But as you say, that brilliant work of firefighters yesterday, the conditions were so dangerous here. So it really is quite remarkable that the damage that is quite limited.
Yeah, the firefighters, they are the true heroes, aren't they? Jackson Williams live in Rothbury, which is in the Hunter region, which faced those catastrophic conditions yesterday. Jackson, thank you. As Jackson mentioned there, the family that he had, they weren't home at the time and they didn't know whether their home would still be there. And that's for the people who are here at the showgrounds in Taree at the moment. They don't know whether their house might still be standing. They just decided to take those warnings from the authorities to leave their property, and they'll head back now to see what condition they might be in. But the authorities have already told us that the number of homes that have been lost so far are only at 12. So you get the feeling that things could have been a whole lot worse. But Sam Dawson, we're going to bring in now from the RFS headquarters in Sydney. Sam, good morning to you. Conditions may have eased. We've been saying this throughout the morning, but the threat still very much remains. So what are the places of most concern today?
Yeah, Pete, exactly right. As you just mentioned, homes and lives are still at risk. We need to remember there are still 2 emergency warnings in place for parts of New South Wales. The first, as you mentioned earlier, the Hillville fire on the mid-north coast. Now, this is broken into 2 warnings. It does include the Rumba Dump fire and also the Hillville Road fire. The southerly change, as you mentioned, Pete, has crossed the ground, and the fire activity, however, is still increasing. That is because of the change of wind from a northwesterly direction. The second fire is the Liberation Fire Trail. There is a number of large bushfires burning in the Coots Crossing, Currumba, Nanaglen and Glenray areas. The fire may also impact on the areas of Woolgoola, also outskirts of Coffs Harbour, Southerly and surrounding areas. Pete, there are still 15 watch and act warnings in place, and as we saw yesterday, they can be very quickly escalated once again to emergency level. And as Laura mentioned earlier, more than 2,000 firefighters have spent the night working tirelessly to contain some of these blazes. Now, last night, Paul Murray spoke with the New South Wales Rural Fire Service Commissioner Shane Fitzsimmons about one particular blaze which was burning near South Turramurra in Sydney's north. This is what he had to say.
Lighting fires deliberately, lighting fires maliciously with the intent to impact your community, to endanger firefighters, to endanger communities. It's a heinous crime. We've got the toughest penalties available. We've got the best police, the best investigators, and if you are going to do that, then you deserve to have the full weight of the law thrown against you, and you deserve to spend time in jail. How dare you threaten our men and women who are out there desperately trying to save their community and the communities of strangers, and how dare you put people in harm's way unnecessarily.
And Pete, you were out there yesterday. It was hot, it was windy, it was extremely dry. Well done to the thousands of firefighters who dedicated their time.
Yeah, absolutely amazing work, but you know, as you just mentioned there, Sam, we're not out of the woods just yet, so even though the firefighters, they will be well and truly tired, they'll be well and truly fatigued by now. They've been fighting these fires for beyond yesterday too, so they've been going for about a week now, so the reinforcements have been coming in, they've been able to help, but they were able to save a lot of properties right across the state yesterday. Sam, thank you. The fire region that Jackson had been talking about in the Hunter Valley, one of the fires is being investigated by police. It may have been deliberately lit. We're going to have the Mayor for Cessnock on the show a short time from now to ask him about that. But the other fire in the Greater Sydney region in Tarramurra may also have been deliberately lit. Christy Coulter joins us live now from Tarramurra. It was very much a surprise, wasn't it, despite the catastrophic conditions that were in place in Sydney yesterday, Christy?
That's right, Pete. The people that live here on Canoon Road in Tarramurra are lucky to have their homes still standing. The fire here took off very quickly yesterday during those catastrophic conditions. As you can see behind me, the bushland that surrounds these homes is burnt to a crisp, but firefighters worked very quickly to save the homes that are literally across the road from this bushland here. The phone call was made by a 16-year-old schoolgirl who just happened to be home at the time because her school was closed yesterday, and luckily luckily enough, some of the bigger aircraft were flying further north to those fires that Jackson and you are at the moment with fire retardant. They did a quick turnaround and dropped that here at Taree. Firefighters were quick on the scene. One firefighter actually injuring themselves, fracturing an arm in the commotion, but they got here and the blaze only burnt out around 2 hectares of bushland around the Taree area. It's all under control now, but of course we still have that very high fire danger rating today, and the total fire ban across Sydney is, as you mentioned before, it is being investigated whether this fire was deliberately lit. Firefighters and fire investigators asking neighbours around the area here yesterday whether they happen to see anyone running from the scene. We'll let you know if anything comes of that throughout this morning, Peter.
Yeah, Christy Coulter live for us in Taree. Appreciate, Christy, thank you. Laura, the problem that firefighters are going to have now, even though the conditions have eased quite considerably, there's no rain forecast, at least not for the next few days and at least not for the next few weeks. And there are more warm fronts that are coming towards the end of this week. Conditions are going to get hot. Winds are going to come across again. At the start of next week, it's going to be the same. So potentially more trouble is ahead.